All right, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Brian Anderson. I'm a systems engineer at Eagle Technologies. Today, presenting with me, really the main presenter, is Andrew Schneider of Aruba Networks. Say hi, Andrew. Searching for the mute button.
Good morning.
There we go. Yeah, I sprung that on you, didn't I?
Yep, appreciate it.
Yeah, so Andrew's going to do most of the talking today. As I mentioned, he's from Aruba Networks. He's going to give you an introduction into Aruba Networks in general. He's briefly going to discuss Aruba's entire portfolio and how they're a market leader and how they've been recognized. But then he's going to home in on network security and more specifically a product called ClearPass. So I'm really going to act as the MC today. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. There's a chat and a Q&A window. If it makes sense, I'll interrupt Andrew. Otherwise, I'll save him for the Q&A portion. Before that, I always joke that I'm contractually obligated to remind folks who Eagle is and how we keep the lights on. So I'll do that, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes, the main presentation. So Eagle Technologies, we've been around for 37 years. Quite simply, we are focused on the data center. More appropriately, you could say we're focused on applications, how you give them appropriate levels of performance, how you back them up, how you provide good disaster recovery and business continuity, and of course, then how you provide access and security, which is the topic that we're going to cover today. We're very engineering heavy. We take pride in that. We've got a lot of post-sales engineers. We've got our own support team to support our tier 1 products. And we spend a lot of time vetting products, and we like to take a best of breed approach. We don't want to pass a lot of paper. We want to figure out who makes the best wireless product out there and then talk to customers about it. So with that, Andrew, I'll pass it over to you, and you can take off and kick off the main presentation.
I appreciate it. So thanks for the introduction. So again, my name is Andrew Schneider, and I'm with Aruba Networks. I'm based in St. Louis, and I'm a major account manager in St. Louis that covers Eastern Missouri. So I know there's people on the call that are kind of all over the Midwest. So as we go through this, if you have questions or want to meet for a follow-up meeting, definitely reach out to Eagle, and we can definitely make sure that you guys are set up with the appropriate counterparts of mine that would cover you guys as customers. So my agenda today is pretty brief. So we're going to talk about who is Aruba. I'm going to assume that because of Eagle's strong presence in the data center, that some of you guys may not know very much about who we are as an organization. So we'll get into some of that, and then we'll talk about what elements are in our portfolio. We're gonna specifically deep dive on one specific area, which is around network security and network authentication today. But we'll talk a little bigger picture about what we can do outside of that if there's other projects that you guys are looking at doing. And then we'll take a closer look at that network security, and then we'll go into Q&A. So who is Aruba? So we're an organization that's been around since 2002. We are the #2 market share wired and wireless company. Back in 2015, we were actually acquired by HP, and their value proposition to us when they acquired us was pretty simple. It was, hey, HP's got the #2 market share wired portfolio. Aruba's got the #2 market share wireless portfolio. Let's put those two things together and let's make it interesting. So, we had a couple of things that were necessary for us to be willing to be acquired. One of those things was that we keep the brand Aruba in place. We don't get absorbed by HP and become HP Networking or something of that nature. HP agreed to that term. And then the other one was that we maintain a separate headquarters and get operated as a subsidiary. So our founder, a guy named Kirti Melkote, is still running the company. We are a completely separate entity. We have a separate headquarters in Silicon Valley where we operate separately. The Aruba name is on the marquee of that building. So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of HPE. All these statistics are not for HPE, but for Aruba specifically. So 145,000 customers around the world, deployed in over 170 countries. And Gartner is a third-party analyst who I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with. They have here's the Gartner Magic Quadrant for LAN access infrastructure, wired and wireless. And you see that in the leader quadrant, there's 2 vendors. There's Cisco and HPE. And you can see that we have surpassed Cisco in the top visionary spot within the leader quadrant. So we're very proud of that. We've been in the leader quadrant for Gartner for 12 years. And then, also we're growing 2 to 3 times faster than the market. The network space actually grew at -2% last year, and we grew at 22%. So we're very proud of that as well. $2.5 billion in revenue, 4,000 full-time employees. And the highlighted bullet point here is mobile first architecture. So if you are going to take away one thing from who is Aruba, the thing I want you to take away from this is we believe mobile first is the future of network. Before we got bought by HP, we were a wireless company. Now we have a full portfolio of wired and wireless products. We still believe mobile first is the right approach. We believe that the access layer of the network will be mobile. That doesn't necessarily mean completely wireless. We'll talk through what that means here shortly. And then also more than 80% of Fortune 100 companies are Aruba customers. To take that just a step further, Gartner also releases a report every year called the Critical Capabilities Report, in which they evaluate all vendors in 6 categories: performance stringent applications, multi-vendor networking, remote office with corporate headquarters, wired and wireless, wired only, and wireless only. If you guys want to see a copy of the full report, we can certainly get that to you. And you can see where all the different vendors rate. That includes Juniper, Cisco, Brocade, Mist, the list goes on. For the first time since that report's been in existence, there was one vendor that took #1 in every single category, and it was Aruba. We're very, very proud of that. So across the board, according to Gartner, as it relates to network technologies, we're the #1 vendor across the board. So now that we've kind of talked about who is Aruba at a very, very high level, and hopefully provided a little bit of credibility for what we're going to talk about today, let's get into the meat and potatoes. So this slide essentially articulates what we do. So what categories of technology does Aruba participate in? Obviously wireless, that's our, that's the #1 thing that we do and that we're known for in the industry. And that includes all wireless organizations. So some of the people on the call may think that's crazy, but we actually have some very, very large organizations, including Microsoft, HP itself, organizations over in Kansas City like Sprint and Cerner that are all wireless edge type companies. And we also have those same organizations and many others do unified communications over wireless. That's been one of the big hangups for a lot of people for a long time is, well, if we want to go all in with wireless, we still have to have wired edge because we have, IP phones. We actually have many large global organizations that run everything, including unified communications over wireless and including video. So if there's customers out there that are building new buildings or are renovating buildings or trying to go to more of a collaborative workspace, we'd love to have the conversation with you. We have many reference accounts of organizations that have gone completely wireless at the edge. There's a dramatic cost savings for doing so because your average access point is going to cover roughly 30 or 40 people in a traditionally built out environment, as opposed to in that same traditional environment, if you have a wired edge, you're going to have 2 Ethernet cables per employee, 1 for data, 1 for voice. So, you can just do the math. If you have 40 employees in a specific area and you have 2 Ethernet cables per employee, that's 80 Ethernet cables plus all the infrastructure that goes with that. Or that same area can have 1 access point with 1 or 2 Ethernet cables, depending on how you have it wired. So just the physical infrastructure cost of a wireless edge, we believe there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of security that goes with that. But there's also a lot of cost savings. So outside of wireless, we do wired. We're very proud of our wired portfolio. It's a very rapidly growing part of what we're doing. We are an innovator. We actually just released a core switch offering that's 100 gig capable at the core. It's a Python-based, script-based core offering. There's a lot of network automation tools built into that core offering. So if you're a organization and you're looking at a core refresh and you've got a Cisco or a Juniper core, we compete very, very nicely in that space at a very good price point. Our edge access switching, they come with lifetime warranties for the original owner. Is what it sounds like. That means there's no SmartNet. That means you get TAC access, you get code updates, bug fixes, as long as you own the product. So we have a very compelling story to tell around our wired portfolio. Many large organizations like McDonald's, Home Depot, United Airlines, they're migrating towards us in the wired space. Network security, this is a place where we see a lot of growth. The 2 things that are highlighted on that slide in orange, network access control and authentication and IoT, are what we're going to focus on today. But we have solutions in those spaces. And then we also have a UEBA solution, which is behavioral analytics. And it was actually just announced last week that our technology solution for UEBA was voted SC Magazine's 2018 Best Threat Detection Technology. So if you're familiar with SC Magazine, it's like Network World for security. It's the biggest publication that circulates. We're very proud of the fact that we were voted the best threat detection solution in that space. So if you guys are looking at analytics, machine learning, behavioral threat detection type solutions, we have a very, very good solution there. Definitely talk to Eagle and we can get something set up. Moving on into network management, we have a multi-vendor monitoring and visibility solution called Airwave. We also have a machine learning solution that optimizes benchmarks, does impact validation and anomaly detection for large WLAN environments. And we also just made an acquisition about a month ago of a company called Cape Networks that does sensor-based service assurance. So if there's places in your network, and by the way, this is a multi-vendor solution as well. So if there's places in your network where people are complaining about performance issues, this solution pays attention to DHCP, DNS, pays attention to your WAN links. It pays attention to a whole bunch of different things. So we can actually tell you if someone's in a specific building or a specific area is complaining about service disruptions. We can actually give you very specific information as to what could potentially be going on. We can simulate different applications. With that solution, we can tell you if someone's using Facebook and there's a Facebook service issue on the software level, we can tell you that versus if it's actually a hardware issue. If it's a DNS or DHCP issue, we can tell you at which layer there's a service disruption. Very, very compelling solution. Again, multi-vendor. So we participate in that space. Remote networking, this is becoming a big deal. We actually have a solution that broadcasts over WAN via layer 2. So if you take an IP phone home and plug it in, it just works. We have a lot of customers that have remote call centers. We have a couple of very large healthcare institutions in St. Louis that are doing this, and a couple of very large insurance companies like the Hartford, where when you call customer service, you're actually not talking to someone in a call center. You're talking to a remote agent at their house, and they're using remote networking technology to do it. Very secure, very simple. Again, because it's broadcast via layer 2, that's all IPsec tunneled back to the main data center, but allows users to have the same SSIDs broadcast at home that are broadcast in the corporate buildings, allowing configuration and use to be very simple. IoT, this is something that's coming up all over the place, whether it be a soda machine in your building that the Coke guy wants to put on your network, or whether it be an IP camera, an HVAC system. IoT is becoming something that a lot of people are doing. That's obviously a big challenge because it's creating a much larger footprint. They're saying that there's going to be tens of billions of new IoT devices on the network in the next 5 years. So it's something that, whether you like it or not, a lot of the devices that you're buying and bringing into your organization are kind of IoT ready. So, refrigerators, cameras, things like that, they may have a network connection on them, even if you don't want those to be active in your specific environment. But unless you turn those features off, or unless you assign a password that's not the default password, those devices are on your network, and they can be compromised. We'll share a slide here in a minute about some of the danger of IoT and how we can help remediate that danger. And then mobile engagement. So everybody's got a smartphone with them everywhere they go now. Organizations like Aruba, we look at that smartphone as kind of a mobile marketing device. Every one of our access points shipped comes with a BLE beacon built into it. So mobile engagement allows us to basically do indoor. So think of your Google Maps or your Apple Maps with your green dot technology that gets you from point A to point B and shows you where you are. Now, if we can extend that same kind of technology into a building and do indoor turn-by-turn direction or indoor proximity, that's essentially what mobile engagement does. We can also do push notifications. We can also do many other very creative things, self-guided tours. We have an art institute in Chicago that if you download the Art Institute's app, you can do self-guided tours. We have several malls that run this technology where we can guide people in and out of stores. So if you have a large, complex network, physical network to manage, like a big healthcare institution, big college campus, things like that, University of Kansas actually is in the process of deploying this for their students to be able to navigate their campus. So any questions like that, definitely let us know. We're happy to participate. So now that we've kind of given the overview, we'll dive deeper into security and what we specifically do. So we talked about IoT briefly, and the dirty little secret about IoT is 85% of businesses will implement IoT in their networks by 2019. You already have it. These are every time we talk to customers, and maybe they don't even know they have it, but we can do different assessments to determine what kind of technologies are on the network. If you have soda machines on your network, if you have HVAC devices on your network, lighting control sensors, the list goes on, chances are you probably already have IoT on your network. So now that the threat surface is much wider because you have all these new devices on your network, how are you going to secure those? How are you going to make sure that either if they're wireless or wired connected to your network, that you're not creating a gaping hole to be compromised? Next big thing. So here's a couple quotes from a couple of big magazines. So hackers infect army of cameras, 2,122 data breaches caused by IoT, connected medical devices, the Internet of Things that could kill you. So IoT is becoming a big deal. It's pervasive, and it's creating a big threat challenge to a lot of organizations. So how do we help with that? ClearPass is the fundamental solution in which we do this. ClearPass is a product that fits in the network access control category of technologies. And if you want to know kind of who the three main market share vendors are in this space, that are the last time Gartner did a NAC Magic Quadrant, the three vendors that were in the leader quadrant were Cisco with ICE, Aruba with ClearPass, and a company called Forescout. So reason I tell you that is because there's a lot of different players in this space, Bradford Networks, the list goes on. But if you're looking for the three major vendors that have the most market share, that also have the furthest developed products, those are the three you should be looking at. And we're happy to compete anytime against any of those companies. But again, the three big ones are Cisco, ICE, Forescout, and Aruba with ClearPass. So what does ClearPass do for you? It essentially allows you to define who and what devices can connect to what other devices, what data, what infrastructure, what applications. So it allows you to identify, enforce, and protect your infrastructure. What that also means is if you're using 802.1x and you're using Radius or Radius type authentication, you can have the same employee in different parts of your building have different levels of access to your network. The same employee with different devices have different levels of access to your network. So if I come into the building on a corporate issued device and I'm in the building that I work in, let's say you have a 4-building campus. I'm in the building I work in, I'm on a corporate issued device, I have unrestricted access to the network. I'm the same employee with the same corporate device. Now I'm in a building that I don't work in, I'm just visiting for a meeting. I have restricted access to the network. The only thing that changed was my location, but now I have restricted access. Same employee, BYOD device, maybe I can get to my email on the internet and that's it. So ClearPass is the traffic cop that allows devices and users to come on the network. And what's nice about ClearPass is we can tell you with 100% confidence, ClearPass has the ability to give you 100% network visibility of every device on your network, wired or wireless, down to the sensor. That's a very bold statement, so I'll repeat it. ClearPass allows you as an organization to have 100% network visibility of every device on your network, all the way down to the sensor, wired and wireless. And by the way, it's a multi-vendor solution. We have many organizations that run ClearPass that don't even run Aruba at all. Boeing and Charter Communications are two that come to mind. They're full Cisco houses, and they run ClearPass. VMware is another one. VMware is a very large Cisco network organization, and they run ClearPass. We have a lot of organizations that have Aruba Wireless, Cisco Wired. We have a lot of organizations that have Aruba Wireless, Juniper Wired. The list goes on, but if you're looking for a NAC solution or a solution that gives you 100% network visibility and network security control, we'd love to have the conversation with you guys. And it's also a much simpler solution to deploy than some of our competitors. So what's one of the competitive advantages of ClearPass? Obviously, we can tell what devices are on the network, but another huge benefit of ClearPass versus most of our competitors is we're context aware. Context, when you're talking about an identity solution or a security solution, is very, very important. I'll give you an example here. In this particular slide, what you see is the user is Bob, the group is faculty, the device is personal iPad, the location is room 104, the time is 9 a.m. on Monday, the compliance is healthy, the MAC address is X, the IP address is Y. So ClearPass looks at all of those things. We can also look at the operating system of the device. We can look at the DHCP fingerprint. We can look at a lot of different things. Reason that's a big deal, we actually have a banking customer in St. Louis that had one of our competitors' products deployed, and an auditor had one of their users log into their device and Control-Alt-Delete lock it after they got through the health check. And then the auditor basically plugged in a flash drive, rebooted the device as a Linux device, and they were on the network. It was because again, context, the solution wasn't paying attention to changing context, which in this particular case was operating system. Because Aruba pays attention to every bit of context, if the operating system of the device changed after it authenticated to the network, we can kick it off the network, or we can quarantine it, or we can do a various different group of different actions. So context is a big deal. Another example of where context matters, let's say an IoT device comes on your network and it's an IP camera, and that IoT device is a camera in your lobby. Now that someone spoofed the MAC address and that device is showing up in another part of your building, well, we know that that's a stationary camera, and we know that it's located in room 104, as in this example. And if that device shows up in room 105, we can turn it off from the network. Again, context is a big deal, and this is something that we consider to be a large competitive advantage over most of our competition. To take that context message a step further, we also have the largest third-party exchange ecosystem for connected solutions for ClearPass in the industry. So if you look at that orange wheel in the middle, starting at the top, you see single sign-on, cloud services, credit card processing, enterprise mobility management, guest access, public key infrastructure, IoT, property management, security devices, security information and event management, so SIMs like a Splunk or a QRadar, social media, messaging solutions, AAA, and multi-factor authentication. So those are all the different categories of technology where we have third-party integration built already, day one out of the box. Some of the large vendors, you can see the logos there. So like, for example, with Palo Alto or Checkpoint or Fortinet, the three of the largest firewall vendors, we can actually pass contextual information from the firewall back to ClearPass and vice versa. So if you have a compromise, instead of being identified in the firewall that port, there was a port that was compromised on your network, we can actually pass information back and say, this was Andrew Schneider's iPad at 9 o'clock in this room that was compromised. So again, we can make troubleshooting and contextual security a huge advantage for you guys. The other benefit of having an open ecosystem like this is especially on the security side, a lot of customers like to have best of breed technologies. This allows you guys to pick whatever solution makes the most sense for your organization and then get the most mileage out of that solution. So we're not going to come in and have you need to forklift that piece of technology out of your network conversation. We're going to have if you have Splunk, or if you have Mobile Iron, or if you have Checkpoint, or if you have Infoblox deployed already, how can we get you more mileage and more benefit out of your existing investment? The other thing that we have, which is really nice, is we have an open API. So if you have a technology that can speak the RESTful API, and we don't have a pre-built recipe to connect to that solution, chances are you can build your own, or we can help you build it depending on how much market share that specific vendor has. So just keep that in mind. Context matters, and now we have the ability to get context from other solutions. Oh, by the way, with ClearPass, there's no add-on cost to do any of this. I know with one of my main competitors, if you want to integrate with firewalls or stuff like that, it's very limited as to what you can do, and there's actually an add-on cost for doing it. So if ClearPass is as easy as I'm making it sound, if it's easy, it can't be secure, right? That's what people tell us all the time. This is a list of some of the customers that have ClearPass deployed. Obviously very large communications companies like Warner Brothers and DreamWorks, internet service providers like AT&T, defense contractors like Boeing, the Air Force, the Army, the Pentagon, the FDIC. So you can see that we have very large, up to and including federal security organizations that have this technology securing their network. So we're very proud of its security, and we'd love to have that conversation with you if that's a question or a concern. So we talked about ClearPass at a super high level, 10,000 foot view. So a couple use cases that we're going to talk about specifically today. First one is called the wireless colorless ports. So plug in any device into any switch port. So earlier I talked about mobility was one of the big things that we go to market with. We believe that the edge of the network is going to be mobile. Most of it we believe is going to be wireless, but there's still going to be a wired edge in certain locations. Right now, the way most organizations configure a wired edge is they configure the port. So if you're in your office and you have an Ethernet port on the wall, you're going to predetermine that that's a voice port for a specific user, or you're going to predetermine that that's a printer port. So it's very statically configured today. And we call it colorless because a lot of people color code their ports. So they say, okay, all of our voice is going to be purple, Ethernet cables, all of our data is going to be green, all of our print's going to be blue, etc. You're going to color code it, and it's going to be very static in nature. We believe that the future of the network is you don't tell the port what it is when you configure it. You walk up to it and plug something in. The port should be smart enough to say, oh, this is Andrew's laptop. I'm going to dynamically reconfigure myself for Andrew's level of access to the network. And that's what we're doing today with ClearPass, and that's what we believe the future is. So again, you go up to a printer, unplug the printer, plug in a laptop. right now it's probably going to be in the wrong VLAN, or it's probably just not going to work. With ClearPass, because we profile every single device that comes on the network, and we know what every single device that comes on the network is and what permissions it has, we can tell the switch what we want it to be at the port level. So moving forward, if you have a retail organization or a distributed enterprise and you have locations in different countries, you don't have to worry about what port's plugged into what Ethernet cable's plugged into what port. ClearPass is smart enough to basically know. So literally you can put a very basic configuration on a switch, IP address, etc., ship a switch out to a location, and just tell someone at the location, just plug the ports in, and it'll work. So I go in, I unplug a printer, I plug it in my laptop, now it's my level of access in the wired network. So that's what we mean by wired colorless ports. Connectivity options. So customers want to manage many different kinds of devices. In healthcare, you've got all these kind of telemetry bedside devices. You've got all these cameras, IoT, printers, laptops, all these different devices coming on the network. Only some of those devices support 802.1x supplicants, and 50% of IoT devices are probably going to come on as wired. So ClearPass supports any customer infrastructure and any need. So if you guys have, again, Cisco deployed, Juniper deployed, the list goes on, ClearPass can do all of these same concepts on your network. Benefits of colorless ports: simplified user experience. It just works. They don't, a lot of times when people break, network security policies, they're not doing it because they're being malicious. They just don't know any better. So if they come into a conference room and unplug the conference phone and plug in their laptop and it doesn't work, they're not doing it to try to get one over on the IT team. They just don't know any better. So with ClearPass, we can prevent a lot of help desk calls from happening, and we can just make the user's experience a lot easier and a lot better. A lot of our customers have told us their main goal for managing an IT department is to make IT invisible. The function of IT should just be to support the business. This allows you to do that, right? You just plug it in, it'll work. Increased visibility. So because again, we profile every single device that comes on the network. And by the way, we have, there's about 20 different ways we can profile a device, all the way down to and including Nmap. So we can get all the way down to the sensor level of profiling with ClearPass, but it gives you increased visibility so you can see and know what's going on in your network and where. Again, we pay attention to context. So we can tell by room number, by location, by device type, by operating system of the device type, by user, by a lot of different things, what's going on. So we can have very much increased visibility. Increased security. The network automatically applies the correct policy, again, based on the profile of the device. Simplified switch configuration. So instead of having to configure every single port on every single switch, all access ports are configured the exact same way. You put an IP address on, have it talk to ClearPass. ClearPass does all the heavy lifting for you. So it makes network refreshes simple. If you guys want to go from one vendor to another vendor, makes that very simple. It makes migrations very simple. It makes supporting a distributed enterprise very simple. So there's a lot of benefits here. We'd love to have these conversations with you. Again, this is fully supported, completely multi-vendor. So if you have any questions, definitely let Eagle know, and we'd love to have a follow-up conversation with you guys. So tunneled node, this is the next, was there a question out there?
Oh, hey, Andrew. I've got a couple questions, but you're doing such a good job answering them that I've been quiet. You had some questions about some of your largest ClearPass customers, and I think you covered that really well. We had some questions about automation, using something like Ansible or Puppet, and you've already mentioned you got an open API. Some folks asked about how you keep unpatched or vulnerable devices off the network. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you answered that by talking about your Exchange ecosystem and your multi-vendor interoperability. Would you agree there, Andrew?
Right. And, so one of the modules within ClearPass, and this is just kind of very high level, just to kind of hopefully whet the appetite a little bit, but one of the modules within ClearPass is we actually have an on-guard module where we can actually do posture checking built into ClearPass. So if you don't want any devices that come on your network unless they have a specific kind of operating system and a specific kind of antivirus protection, anytime a device initiates authentication to the network, we can actually run a check against that, and we can determine, hey, we're not going to let anybody on unless they're running this version of this OS and this version of this antivirus. Or you may want to be a little more generic for BYOD. As long as you're running one of these 5 OSs, or as long as you're running on antivirus and we don't even care which one it is, let them on. So we can do very specific things with that. We can also do, with ClearPass, we can turn off different components of a compute device. So like a USB port, if you want someone to be able to come on your network, but you want USB to be disabled, we can do that with ClearPass as well. So there's a lot of built-in security features for access devices that come on the network. We didn't even get into most of them. But just know that ClearPass, in addition to some of the more sophisticated things it can do all that kind of stuff as well.
Excellent. And tell me if we're getting to it, but we also had a question about how this is priced per device, per port. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so ClearPass is device per, at max load what the concurrent number of MAC addresses on the network is. So if you're an organization and you have 100 users and all those 100 users all come on at the exact same time and they might all have 2 devices, you need ClearPass licensed for 200 devices. If you have 100 users but at the max load on your network you have 30 users on concurrently, you need 30 licenses. So it's licensed per unique MAC address at peak concurrent load, if that makes sense.
Okay. Last question that I've got right now is what does this hardware look like? Is there an appliance? Where does it sit in your network?
So ClearPass, there's a couple different ways you can deploy ClearPass. You can either do a hardware appliance-based solution, or you can do virtual appliances. With ClearPass, we always recommend that it's deployed redundantly. And the reason we say that is because, again, every single device or a user that comes on your network is going to go through ClearPass for authentication. So what that essentially means is if ClearPass failed, you have a choice to make when you configure ClearPass. If it fails, you either fail open or you fail closed. Fail open is obviously a nightmare from a security perspective. Fail closed is a nightmare from a usability perspective. So we always recommend that it's deployed redundantly in a cluster. But you can either do virtual appliances or physical appliances. The cost delta for physical appliances is not that significant. We're not trying to make money on the hardware. We happen to be owned by a server vendor in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So the appliances are simply servers with a lot of RAM, CPU, things like that. If you don't want to use those servers and you want to deploy virtual, we have best practices for size of environment that you can specify. So if you want to run them in your VMware or in your Microsoft Hyper-V environment, we can certainly do that for you as well. It just depends on the size of your environment, but we have validated best practice guides for all that stuff. So does that answer your question?
Yes. Thanks,
Perfect.
Andrew.
Perfect. Any other questions before I move on?
No, not at the moment. Yeah, you're answering them as you go. Good
stuff. Just a couple more slides. I don't want to bore you guys to death. So tunneled node, this is another cool use case. And this is something that's actually going to be a little more specific. So everything we've talked about so far is completely multi-vendor. We can do it on anybody's network. Now, if you want to get into what's some stuff that you can do with Aruba that's unique to Aruba, this is one of the things that we can do, and it's called tunneled node. So suppose your switch is a wired access point. That's essentially what we can do. We can manage switches like access points. There's a lot of benefit to that. So we talked about context earlier. We're going to talk about context again now. If you look at Aruba and the DNA of Aruba, we're built on the concept of role-based access. So a role to Aruba is comprised of 4 different things. It's who you are, what device you're using, where you're physically located, and what you're trying to do. So application or web destination. So if I'm a corporate user and I'm on my corporate device and I'm in the corporate office, I can get to whatever I need to get to. Same corporate user, same corporate device, I'm at my house, I have restricted access. Same corporate user, same device, different location, maybe I get to different applications. So a couple of examples I'll give you. We have a very large school district in St. Louis that has ClearPass and Aruba deployed, and they've got policies where before school or after school, kids can get on Facebook with their BYOD devices. If the kid is in their cafeteria during their lunch break, they can get on Facebook on their BYOD device. But if they're anywhere in the building that's not the cafeteria and it's during school hours, they can't get on Facebook. So we can get to very granular policies on the wireless side. And a lot of customers have been asking us, we'd love to do that same thing on the wired side. So we have this concept now called tunneled node, where if you have our wireless and you have our switches, we can actually do role-based access on the port now, where we can actually essentially tunnel the traffic back to the controller, and we can give you QoS policies. We have a layer 7 firewall built into all of our access points. We natively understand over 2,800 applications. We also have an open API on the firewall and the access points, where if you have a custom app, you can create these policies on a custom app as well. Benefits of a tunneled node deployment: simplified network setup and operation, so you can operate your wired network the exact same way you operate your wireless network. Unified centralized policies across wired and wireless, so you have access to Aruba's controller security features such as firewalls, packet inspection, and fingerprinting. Increased security by client isolation, so individual tunnel per client, even client-to-client traffic is firewalled, and flexible it's flexible where needed. So if you decide during network association if traffic needs to be switched locally or tunneled, we can do that centrally as well. So tunneled node is a very, very cool feature. We have a lot of customers that want a simplified network approach to run tunneled node. We've been asked for this for a long time, and we have a solution that can do this. One of the questions we get asked a lot about tunneled node is, well, if you're tunneling all the port traffic back to a wireless controller, how does that work? And do you guys have enough bandwidth to do it? We have controllers that can do 100 gigabit of throughput, and we have switches that can do, at the access layer that all day that can do 10 gig up. We have gig uplinks as well. So chances are you're not going to throw a scenario at us, even in a large organization like Ohio State University is one of our large customers on the WLAN side. There's not going to be a lot of organizations that are too big for us to be able to handle tunneled node on the wired side as well. So that unfortunately, tunneled node, because of some of the things that we do that are unique and differentiated in the marketplace, this is something that does require an investment in Aruba infrastructure. But everything we've talked about up until this point is completely multi-vendor. So last slide, and then I'll open it for Q&A. So why Aruba for NAC and authentication? So again, we're multi-vendor. Everything we talked about before we got to tunneled node is completely multi-vendor. Context does matter. This is something that we consider ourselves to have a significant advantage over our competition for. 100% network visibility, to be able to go back to the business and say, nothing gets on the network unless I tell it can get on the network. And we know every single device plugged in or every single device connected via wireless. That's a big claim, but it's something that we can do. The colorless edge, again, in a multi-vendor environment. So mobile edge, including wired, is the ability to basically have a complete mobile strategy at the edge, where you don't have to worry about configuring ports. We can do that. And then again, if you add our wireless and our switching, which according to Gartner are industry best and about 30 to 40% less expensive than Cisco, we can do some additional magic with managing switch ports like wireless access points. Last thing I'll say here is, again, remember that probably second or third slide I showed, we participate in more than 10 different segments of the network space. According to Gartner, we're number one in 6 of 6 categories. IDC said that if you buy Aruba, there's a 360% 5-year ROI. And SC Magazine just voted as best threat detection technology solution. So if there's things that are not network access controller authentication that you guys want to talk about, we'd love to have those conversations as well. So definitely chat with the Eagle folks, and we'd love to talk about any other parts of our portfolio as well. I'm happy to come in and give an overview, a deep dive on NAC or authentication. Happy to come in and give a deep dive on any of our other solutions in our portfolio as well. So appreciate your guys' time. Are there any other questions that came up that we can answer?
Yeah, I've got one more question. What kind of extra benefits present themselves if you're also an Aruba wireless customer? You guys mentioned you're so friendly with other vendors.
Right. So in addition to the tunnel node stuff, which extends to the wired side, we talked about that concept earlier of role-based access. So some of the things that we can do if you're an Aruba wireless customer, is we can take advantage of role-based access when we're making these policy decisions. So with non-Aruba customers, there's some things that we have to kind of modify because Cisco, for example, doesn't understand the concept of roles. So we have to use things like downloadable ACLs to get some of the benefit out of a Cisco network. It still works really well, but a role, which is kind of the DNA for Aruba, allows us to do some very granular things and some very specific things around users, devices, locations, and applications. So if you have Aruba and you deploy ClearPass, there's a lot more benefit that's specific to you. But if you have a multi-vendor environment, we can get by with and provide additional levels of security, even above and beyond Cisco. So one of the things that we hear a lot in the Cisco conversation is Cisco is now positioning this port-based security strategy where you've got to have, the latest, greatest, Nexus 9K access layer switches, and Cisco's forcing an edge infrastructure refresh in order to get the full benefit of their new zero trust port-based security model. We can do that stuff in a Cisco environment on more versions of Cisco switches than Cisco can support. So there's a lot of benefit even in a multi-vendor environment. But if you do have Aruba with role-based access, there's some things we can do that are a little easier and there's a little more benefit too.
Okay, excellent. I just wanted to point out, Andrew, because I forget myself when you talk sometimes, that you actually have an engineer that can take you even farther down the rabbit hole. You did such a good job there on the tech stuff.
Right, I'm just the sales guy. So yeah, I've got an engineer. His name is Scott Monosmith. He's actually a Cisco CCIE, so he understands Cisco really well. In addition to Aruba, one of the things he's been kind of very beneficial at is a lot of customers come to us and say, well, we've been Cisco for a long time. We want to know the differences between Cisco and Aruba, and can I make my Cisco switch really work with your solution, or can I manage if I decide to go away from Cisco and go to an Aruba wired infrastructure, can my Cisco phone system still work on it? He can show and demonstrate all that stuff. So yeah, if we want to get into super nerd knob type conversations and get into physics and all the craziness that is way above my pay scale, I've got a guy for you. So definitely don't be bashful.
All right, perfect. Well, really, we're pretty much at the end here. We wouldn't be a very good sales organization if we didn't try to talk about next steps. So if you like what you're hearing, and Larry, I've got your question. I'll reply to you here in a second. Lots of good follow-up opportunities. We could come on site, take you further down the rabbit hole, as Andrew said. We can always schedule a demo. And of course, we're going to have future events from Eagle, multiple products, but we're also going to take you deeper into Aruba's portfolio. As you could tell by Andrew at the beginning of this, there was quite a bit that we could talk about, and we just kind of chose ClearPass to really focus on. But there's some other stuff that we're going to follow up with some more webinars and some more meetings here in the Midwest, maybe lunch and learns, feed you a steak, where we'll talk some more about that product portfolio. So you'll be hearing about this again. But if you have any more questions today, feel free to email me or to get in contact with Gail, our marketing director. She should be in your inbox, and we'll get you taken care of. Andrew, I really appreciate your time. That was a great presentation.
And if you guys, to the Eagle guys, if you want us to come back and get really technical on any of these things, or you want us to give an overview on any of the other things we talked about, we appreciate you thinking of us. And if there's anything else we can do for you guys, let us know. We're happy to do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.